We've come back now to our series on the state of the church, and we've come to the great country of Canada. Canada has a very rich history, and it is closely aligned with the United States. I've asked my dear friend and brother, Jonathan Turton, aka Enoch II, to help me discuss the spiritual condition of his great country. Brother John, welcome to proclaim his word.
Hi, Brother Mark. Happy to be here.
It's good to have you, man. Well, John, let's get right into it. A few weeks ago, you were telling me about the United Church of Canada. You were telling me about the Anglican Church wanting to merge with them, and political correctness and Muslim mosque popping up all over the place. Brother, why don't you just go ahead? It's all yours. Why don't you tell us about the spiritual condition and what you see it like in your part of the country, in Canada?
Okay. Sure, Brother Mark. I live in southern Ontario, so right on the north shore of Lake Ontario, near Toronto, which is the capital of Ontario. The capital of the country, Ottawa, is also in Ontario, but Ottawa is not the capital of the province. Toronto is. So anyway, that's where I live, and so that's where my point of view is from. And I was raised in the United Church of Canada, which is a liberal, very liberal denomination, and it has at least become that. The United Church was formed by the merger of a number of denominations back in the day, and I'm not sure about what they all were, but I know the Methodist was one of them. And it seems like they were a much more faithful denomination back then. Today they're entirely liberal. I went to the baptism of my niece, who's my sister's daughter, and I was sitting there and I was waiting for them to mention Jesus, not just God. And finally, they mentioned Jesus once. So I waited for it, and it's like it's like that's a real strain for them. They don't want to mention his name. And I was looking today at some like weekly devotions that they have on their website, and I actually have a fair bit of involvement with this over the years. I've been to one of their conferences too for the presbytery, and I noticed everybody at the conference, like it seems like almost everybody was in a wheelchair. There was something wrong with them, or they had some sort of mental problems or other physical problems. And, I know that there's not many wise and not many powerful who are chosen. But when I put it all together, the picture I get is almost like it's for people who have suffered a lot of pain, and we all get together and we commiserate with one another, and we have a giant pity party, and there's no power in it. It's almost like they view Jesus as a really good guy who had this love and open-heartedness for people, even though he was so mistreated, and then he died. And that's the way it is for us too. And so Jesus is a good model for people to follow who also have a lot of suffering and sorrow in their lives. So it's really very, very hopeless. It's very distressing kind of church. There's little hope. There's no preaching of the resurrection. I just looked at today at one of their weekly devotions or weekly reflections, and it says that the early church understood Jesus was only able to come to terms with Good Friday when they regarded Jesus as the suffering servant. And I'm like, well, that's true. There's truth there. But they came to terms with Good Friday because Jesus rose from the dead. Right? It's his resurrection. And that's power. And I think they don't believe that. And they have a very low view of Scripture. So there's very little power there. There's very little hope. And I think that these people are kind of held in a bondage by this church. And they're kind of soft-headed. The church is soft-headed. In that they're so, you can have that bleeding heart where you love everybody, like you're like, oh, we feel sorry for this group, but discernment goes out the window. And that's why this church is also very anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, because these days in Canada anyway, there's a powerful disinformation campaign that characterizes the Israelis as, apartheid state, just evil, brutal regime, and the poor Palestinians who are being so abused by them. And with its lack of discernment, the United Church of Canada has gotten right on that bandwagon, and their hearts go out to the poor Palestinian people, but they have no discernment that there's a spiritual deceiver. and that Islam wants to destroy Israel because it hates the Jews,
Mm.
because God is the God of the Jews, and the God of Islam is not God. And
Right.
that is spiritual, and that would just be something that the United Church doesn't seem like it could ever accept.
Right. On the flip side of that, your prime minister, Stephen Harper, he is pro-Israel, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He is. And there's a video online here where it shows him speaking up lately and saying that he's going to stand, his government is going to stand beside Israel no matter what.
Amen.
And yeah, and he has said also it's very unpopular to do so. It's very popular in the UN to just be automatically against Israel. He
Mm.
says, but he's not going to do that. The country's going to stand beside Israel.
Good for
So
him.
that's wonderful. Yeah, and I believe he's a Christian. I've there's you get evidence for that kind of thing, and
Hmm.
I saw him give an Easter message one time, and you could see he had joy about
Hmm.
the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. Like he participated in the joy of it. He was not just nominally saying, "Well, to the Christians, this is
Right.
Easter." Yeah.
Well,
So
praise God for that.
yeah, we're very blessed in that. Yeah.
All right. So, what were you telling me a couple of weeks ago about the Anglican Church wanting to merge with the United Church?
Yeah, my understanding is that a few years back, the Anglican Church, it has a lot of real estate. It has a lot of really nice churches and buildings in Canada, but like a very declining membership and attendance. So there's fewer and fewer people going to the Anglican Church. So I believe they entered into talks at one time with the United Church to merge, and they produced out of that a hymn book called Voices United. And the good thing is that the hymn book has a lot of solid doctrine in it. So the hymn book is the only, now they never did merge. The talks fell apart. I guess they couldn't come to agreement about certain things.
Hmm.
And so they never did merge. Now I believe the Anglican Church is bankrupt or basically broke in Canada. But the United Church now has this hymn book. And the hymn book has a lot of good doctrine. So I think the only chance you're likely going to have to get saved in the United Church is by actually really hearing and believing the hymns.
Real. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the cults in Canada, in your part of Canada? Are they very active? I mean, do you see them a lot? The Jehovah's Witness, the Mormons, and all those people?
Yeah, yeah, I do. At the house where I live, I've seen the Jehovah's Witnesses come by and the Mormons come by. I've encountered Jehovah's Witnesses out on the street as well, and uh, going door to door at other places than where I've lived. And you try to minister to somebody sometimes, and the next thing you know, somebody's handing them a Koran or a
Mm.
witness literature. Um, a lady I ministered to the other day, she showed me a Mormon picture of Jesus that she says she wants to draw. And I'm like, no, we don't. We should stay away from images. There's
Mm.
already too many images on YouTube of Jesus.
That's
I'm
right.
against that. I know this is not really a preaching opportunity, but I am against that.
Hmm.
It gets in your mind's eye,
That's right.
takes the place of the real Jesus.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
especially I maybe and like I say, this image was from the Mormons too.
Right. Right.
Somehow she's getting her hands on their literature too.
Mm. Mm. Well, you mentioned twice so far. You mentioned the Muslims. What kind of presence do they have in Canada? I mean, here in the United States, I mean, the Muslim mosques are popping up all over the place. What about Canada?
Well, yes, they are appearing all in many places. I don't know where they're getting their funding from, but they
Saudi Arabia.
yeah, probably, yeah. And one place in Pickering, well, you don't know the territory around me, but I've noticed that they tend to start off in places which are more like industrial parks or more kind of like out of the way places.
Hmm.
Like one I noticed was just off the 401, the turnoff ramp, and another one is near a place where I know I do some ministry, and it's like in a very poor area, but
Hmm.
they're building like a nice new, uh, fancy-looking Middle Eastern style building there. So they're kind of doing it like cleverly, in almost under the radar, under people's notice.
Mm.
So before I guess the Christian population realizes that there's so many mosques, they're going to just, it's just going to be in like an overnight transformation.
Mm.
That's the impression I get because of where they're popping up.
Well, that's how the Muslims operate, very covertly and many times, and they pretend to be your friends one moment until they have the numbers to overthrow you, and then that's exactly what they do. You know.
Yeah.
Well, talking about that, what is it like with the political correctness in your country? Especially in the churches and stuff like that.
Um, I don't know about in the church's political correctness, except the United Church, which, as I said, like it just is so liberal, right?
Hmm.
And that's why they're on the Palestinian side because that's where the PC winds have turned. It's fashionable and politically correct to be pro-Palestine these days.
Hmm.
Um, As for, one other thing about Islam I wanted to say, you can track it not only according to mosques, but also according to like halal groceries and things like that.
Hmm.
And that's where I live. I just found a halal chicken in the freezer. So, so they're definitely interested.
Oh man. So
Yeah.
have you experienced? I mean, how many Christians are in your area? I mean, that you notice. I mean, is there a huge Christian population? Small? I mean, really? I mean, Bible believing we're talking about, not just nominal, but people who truly believe the Bible. I mean, what's the population like?
Yeah. Well, that is always hard to tell but there was a time, I guess, when I started to like um, get networked with Christians more generally in the area, and I happen to encounter like a lot of people who are actually really like sold out for Jesus Christ. I meet them not always in churches, but just on the street in various places.
Hmm.
Uh, and so I've met a lot of very faithful people
Hmm.
just out there in the world, and
Hmm.
that's great reassurance to me. But I've also met some people who at first I thought were real brethren, and then they started telling me some crazy stuff, and I
Hmm.
realized, well, this person, I don't know about them at all.
Right.
And sadly, some of the most zealous people are the people who are really the most out there in
Right.
terms of their beliefs.
Right. Well, John, we only have a few minutes left. Is there any last thing you'd like to tell us? Anything that you think we should know about?
Well, yeah, there's one thing that I'd say about my family and our experience with the United Church, and that is that um, churches, when they depart from the Bible, it does harm to souls because my family, I don't really believe that they're saved.
Hmm.
But they were going to the United Church for many years, and when the church decided that it was right to ordain homosexuals, my parents, who had a sense of moral outrage about that, they stopped going. They used that they stopped going because of that. And so for many years, that was an end of an involvement with any church or with any kind of Christianity or with the Bible.
Hmm.
So, when a church departs from the word of the Lord, then it has negative effects on real
Mm.
families. And so yeah, so that's a concern
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. Just like to know exactly how many families were impacted by that and just how many people were turned off. Because I mean, I know that once people stop going to church, it's almost impossible for them to go back. They just kind of turn their backs and then that's it. And unless God brings them back, that's it. They're done.
Well, yes, and well, now interestingly, my parents are willing to return to church. They're thinking about going back to church, but they're only going to go to the United
Oh,
Church.
yeah.
See, they feel comfortable in the United Church because there's no gospel preached,
Right.
but they wouldn't go to a Baptist church.
Hmm.
They wouldn't go even a Salvation Army church.
Mm.
My dad went to a Salvation Army church once with me, and and he thought they were way crazy,
Yeah.
and and it was not at all.
Yeah.
Ex-
Yeah.
So
Oh.
these will make people feel comfortable thinking, well, I'm going to church, I'm a Christian,
Hmm.
but they're not saved.
Yeah.
It's a real deception.
Yeah. No kidding. Okay. It's only going to get worse, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And then the other churches, like the charismatic and Pentecostal, such as there are in Canada too, that side of
Hmm.
things, there's a great mixture there of spirits. There's God there, but there's like spirits not of God there
Right.
too. So on the other side, there's that deception.
Yeah.
Uh, those people seem very, very exuberantly Christian, but some of them you got to wonder. I mean, is it really the Spirit of God or another?
Well, it reminds me of the Toronto blessing of what, 16, 17 years ago, that's
Yeah,
supposedly revival, and it was completely demonic. I mean, just totally demonic. And of course, after the Toronto blessing, they kind of shipped that thing over to Brownsville and then to Lakeland, and it's just one false revival after another. But we're in the last days, and again, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse.
yeah. And I knew a United Church minister at one time who went to the Toronto revival, and she was sitting there, and she told me that she thought it was crazy.
Mm.
She thought these people were out of their minds, and that it was probably of the devil.
Hmm.
And so she's right.
Yeah.
But she's part of an apostate church
Right.
herself.
Yeah. The fact that she's a minister.
Yeah.
She has no business being a minister. Yeah.
Or her sermons came more from like chicken soup for the soul than from the Bible.
Oh boy.
It's true, man.
Yeah. Well, on that high
So,
note, John, thank you so much for coming by Proclaim His Word. Thank you for giving us a bird's eye view of the state of the church in Ontario. I know that Canada is a pretty large country, and I will be doing another video in a few weeks on the western part of Canada. So thank you, brother, for telling us about what it's like in your part of the country, and really, really do appreciate it, and God bless you. Huh?
thank you.
All right, man.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, take care, man.